The trading floor at Meridian Capital buzzed with its usual chaos. Monitors flickered with green and red numbers, traders shouted over each other, and the smell of coffee mixed with the tension that came with managing billions of dollars. But in the corner office overlooking Manhattan's financial district, Marcus Chen sat in complete silence. While his colleagues celebrated Bitcoin's meteoric rise past $60,000, Marcus stared at charts that told a different story. His fingers traced patterns on his screen that others refused to see. The euphoria was deafening, but Marcus heard something else entirely. He heard the whispers of an impending collapse. Marcus had built his reputation on being different. While other traders rode waves of momentum, he dove deep into fundamentals. While they celebrated bull runs, he studied market psychology. And right now, every indicator he trusted was screaming the same message. Bitcoin was about to fall, and fall hard. The morning sun cast long shadows across his office as Marcus pulled up his personal trading account. His hands trembled slightly as he typed in the numbers. $100 million. His entire net worth, accumulated over 15 years of careful trading and strategic investments. He was about to bet it all against the most popular asset in the world. His assistant knocked on the door. Sarah had worked with him for 8 years and knew his moods better than anyone. She entered with his usual morning coffee and immediately sensed something was different. "The Henderson meeting is in 20 minutes, she said, placing the cup on his desk. "Should I push it back?" Marcus looked up from his screen. "Cancel it. Cancel everything for today." Sarah's eyebrows raised. Marcus never canceled meetings. "Is everything all right? I'm about to do something that will either make me a legend or destroy my career," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of his decision. "I need you to witness this." He turned his monitor toward her. On the screen was a massive short position against Bitcoin, worth $100 million. Sarah's face went pale. "Marcus, that's your entire portfolio. If Bitcoin goes up even 10%, you'll lose everything." "I know," he replied, moving his cursor to the execute button. "But I've never been more certain of anything in my life." The trade executed with a simple click. In that moment, Marcus Chen became the most exposed man on Wall Street. He had bet everything on Bitcoin's downfall while the rest of the world was buying every dip. What happened next would either vindicate his analysis or end his career in spectacular fashion. The first sign came 3 days later. Bitcoin had continued its climb, reaching $65,000. Marcus watched his account balance drop by $25 million. His colleagues, unaware of his position, congratulated him on Bitcoin's success. Each celebration felt like a knife twisting in his chest. But Marcus held firm. His research had shown him something others missed. The institutional buying that was driving Bitcoin's price wasn't organic. It was coordinated, artificial, and unsustainable. Large corporations were purchasing Bitcoin not out of belief in its technology, but as part of a massive market manipulation scheme. The scheme had been orchestrated by a consortium of hedge funds led by Blackstone Dynamics. They had been accumulating Bitcoin quietly for months, then launched a coordinated marketing campaign to drive retail investors into a buying frenzy. The plan was simple. Pump the price as high as possible, then dump their holdings all at once, leaving retail investors holding worthless assets. Marcus had discovered this through his network of international contacts. A former colleague in Singapore had noticed unusual trading patterns. Large blocks of Bitcoin were being moved between wallets in a coordinated fashion, always just before major price movements. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Armed with this knowledge, Marcus knew the collapse was inevitable. The question was when. The answer came on a Tuesday morning in March. Marcus arrived at his office to find chaos. Bitcoin had dropped 15% overnight, falling from $68,000 to $57,000. The crypto markets were in freefall, and panic was spreading across social media. But this was just the beginning. Over the next 48 hours, Marcus watched his prediction unfold with terrifying precision. Bitcoin crashed through support level after support level. 60,000 became 50,000. 50,000 became 40,000. The sell-off accelerated as leveraged positions were liquidated and panic selling took hold. Marcus's short position, which had been underwater for weeks, suddenly became incredibly profitable. His account balance swung from a loss of 30 million to a profit of 50 million, then 100 million, then 200 million. The financial media scrambled to explain the crash. Analysts who had been predicting Bitcoin would reach $100,000 suddenly changed their tune. They blamed regulatory concerns, environmental issues, anything but the truth that Marcus knew. This wasn't a natural correction. It was a coordinated dump by institutional players who had manipulated the market from the beginning. As Bitcoin fell below $30,000, Marcus made his second crucial decision. He began closing his short position and buying Bitcoin directly. Not because he believed in it long-term, but because he recognized the signs of capitulation. The panic selling was reaching its peak, which meant a dead cat bounce was inevitable. This decision would prove to be even more profitable than his initial short. While other traders watched their portfolios evaporate, Marcus accumulated Bitcoin at prices not seen in 2 years. He bought at $28,000, $25,000, and finally at $22,000. Each purchase was calculated, based on his analysis of market sentiment and trading volume. The cryptocurrency community was in shock. Forums that had been filled with predictions of eternal growth now buzzed with despair and anger. Retail investors who had bought at the peak faced devastating losses. Some had mortgaged their homes to buy Bitcoin at $60,000, only to watch it fall to a third of that value. But Marcus felt no satisfaction in being right. He had witnessed the destruction of people's life savings, the collapse of retirement plans, and the shattering of dreams. The market manipulation he had identified had real victims, and their pain was evident in every desperate forum post and news article. The bounce came exactly when Marcus expected it. After touching $22,000, Bitcoin began to recover. Not because of any fundamental change, but because the coordinated selling campaign had ended. The institutional players had completed their dump and were now quietly accumulating again at low prices. Marcus rode this bounce from $22,000 back to $35,000, generating another massive profit. In total, his trades had turned $100 million into over $400 million in less than 3 months. But the story was far from over. News of Marcus's successful trades began to leak. In the tight-knit world of Wall Street, information traveled fast. Colleagues who had mocked his pessimism now sought his advice. Financial journalists called for interviews. The man who had bet against Bitcoin and won became an overnight celebrity. The attention brought unexpected consequences. Marcus received a call from Amanda Richardson, a senior investigator with the Securities and Exchange Commission. She wanted to meet about his trading activity during the Bitcoin crash. They met at a quiet restaurant in Midtown Manhattan. Amanda was professional but direct. "Mr. Chen, your trading patterns during the Bitcoin collapse were remarkable. Almost as if you knew exactly when it would happen and how far it would fall." Marcus chose his words carefully. "I've been analyzing cryptocurrency markets for years. The signs of a bubble were obvious to anyone willing to look." "Perhaps," Amanda replied, "but your timing was extraordinarily precise. were investigating potential market manipulation during that period. Large institutional players may have coordinated to drive prices artificially high, then dump their holdings. Did you have any information about such activities? This was the moment Marcus had been dreading. He could reveal what he knew about Blackstone Dynamics and their manipulation scheme, but doing so would likely implicate him in insider trading. Or he could remain silent and let the investigation run its course. I can only speak to my own analysis and trading decisions, Marcus said finally. Everything I did was based on publicly available information and technical analysis. Amanda studied his face for a long moment. We'll be in touch if we have further questions. The SEC investigation would eventually expose the manipulation scheme, but not through Marcus's testimony. Other evidence emerged that confirmed what he had suspected. Blackstone Dynamics and several other hedge funds were fined hundreds of millions of dollars for coordinating the pump and dump operation. The scandal sent shockwaves through the financial industry and led to new regulations for cryptocurrency trading. But Marcus's role remained largely unknown to the public. He had profited from predicting the manipulation, not participating in it. Legally, he was in the clear. Morally, the situation was more complex. The profits from his Bitcoin trades allowed Marcus to start his own hedge fund. Chen Capital launched with $500 million in assets under management, all funded by his successful short position. He hired a team of researchers focused on identifying market manipulation and artificial price movements across various asset classes. His fund's investment strategy was unique. Instead of following trends, they specifically looked for situations where institutional players were manipulating markets. They would take positions against artificial price movements and profit from the eventual corrections. It was a dangerous strategy that required precise timing and nerves of steel, but it proved incredibly profitable. Over the following year, Chen Capital generated returns of over 200%. They successfully predicted and profited from manipulation schemes in everything from meme stocks to commodity futures. Marcus had turned his knowledge of how markets could be gamed into a systematic investment approach. But success brought new challenges. Other hedge funds began copying his strategies. Regulatory scrutiny increased as authorities tried to understand how Chen Capital consistently outperformed the market. Competitors spread rumors that Marcus had inside information or was himself involved in manipulation schemes. The pressure intensified when Bitcoin began to recover. By late 2023, it had climbed back above $50,000, driven by renewed institutional adoption and regulatory clarity. Critics pointed to the recovery as evidence that Marcus had been wrong about Bitcoin's long-term prospects. Marcus knew they missed the point. He had never been betting against Bitcoin's technology or long-term potential. He had been betting against market manipulation and artificial price inflation. The fact that Bitcoin recovered to fair value didn't invalidate his analysis of the earlier bubble. The real test came when Bitcoin approached its previous all-time high. Would history repeat itself? Were institutional players setting up another pump and dump scheme? Marcus's analysis suggested not. The market dynamics were different this time. The buying appeared more organic, driven by genuine adoption rather than coordinated manipulation. When Bitcoin broke through $70,000 and continued climbing, Marcus didn't short it. Instead, he began accumulating small positions, believing the growth was sustainable. This decision confused many observers. The man who had famously bet against Bitcoin was now buying it. Financial media struggled to understand his apparent change of heart. Marcus rarely granted interviews, preferring to let his trading results speak for themselves. But in a rare public appearance at a cryptocurrency conference, he explained his philosophy. "I don't bet against assets," he said. I bet against manipulation. When prices are driven by genuine factors, I respect the market. When they're driven by artificial schemes designed to extract money from retail investors, I take the opposite side. The audience was split between admiration and skepticism. Some saw him as a market sage who could identify manipulation better than anyone else. Others viewed him as opportunistic, profiting from others' misfortune without contributing real value to the markets. Marcus understood the criticism but remained focused on his mission. Market manipulation destroyed lives and undermined confidence in financial systems. By profiting from its collapse, he was providing a valuable service, even if it wasn't always appreciated. His fund continued to grow, reaching over $2 billion in assets under management. The investment strategy evolved to include activism, publicly exposing manipulation schemes and pushing for regulatory changes. Marcus testified before Congress about the need for stronger oversight of cryptocurrency markets and more severe penalties for market manipulation. The testimony was a turning point. No longer was Marcus just a successful trader who had gotten lucky with Bitcoin. He became a voice for market integrity, using his platform to advocate for protection of retail investors. The man who had once been motivated purely by profit now found himself fighting for broader principles. The fight wasn't always popular. Exposing manipulation schemes made powerful enemies. Marcus received threats from unknown sources. His fund was subjected to multiple regulatory investigations, all of which found no wrongdoing but were clearly motivated by pressure from targeted firms. The stress began to take its toll. Marcus developed insomnia, staying awake at night analyzing markets and watching for signs of new manipulation schemes. His personal relationships suffered as he became increasingly focused on his work. The success that had once brought satisfaction now felt like a burden. The breaking point came during an investigation into a new manipulation scheme involving artificial intelligence tokens. Marcus had identified coordinated buying that was driving prices of worthless AI coins to astronomical levels. His fund took massive short positions, expecting the inevitable collapse. But this time, the manipulators fought back. Instead of simply dumping their positions, they launched a coordinated attack on Chen capital. They spread false rumors about the fund's activities, filed frivolous lawsuits, and even attempted to hack into the fund's computer systems. The pressure was unlike anything Marcus had experienced. His investors began to panic, worried about the legal challenges and media attention. Several major clients withdrew their money, forcing Marcus to close some of his positions at a loss. For the first time since his initial Bitcoin short, Marcus questioned whether he had made the right choice. The financial rewards were substantial, but the personal cost was becoming unbearable. He began to consider stepping away from active trading and focusing on education and advocacy. The decision was made for him when the AI token scheme finally collapsed. As Marcus had predicted, the coordinated buying ceased and prices fell by over 90%. His short positions generated massive profits, but the victory felt hollow. The retail investors who had bought into the AI token hype lost billions of dollars collectively. Marcus realized that simply profiting from market manipulation wasn't enough. He needed to find ways to prevent it from happening in the first place. This insight led to his next venture, a nonprofit organization dedicated to educating retail investors about market manipulation and providing them with tools to identify suspicious trading patterns. The Marcus Chen Foundation launched with $100 million in funding, all from his Bitcoin trading profits. The foundation developed free educational resources, funded academic research into market manipulation, and lobbied for stronger regulatory protections for individual investors. The work was personally fulfilling in ways that trading had never been. Instead of profiting from others' losses, Marcus was helping people avoid those losses entirely. The Foundation's educational programs reached millions of people, teaching them to recognize the warning signs of market manipulation. But the trading world continued to call to him. When new manipulation schemes emerged, Marcus still felt compelled to take positions against them. The profits from these trades went directly to the Foundation, creating a virtuous cycle where fighting manipulation funded efforts to prevent it. 5 years after his famous Bitcoin short, Marcus had become something unique in the financial world, a trader who used his skills to fight the very forces that made his success possible. He had turned his ability to identify market manipulation into a force for positive change. The cryptocurrency markets had evolved significantly since Marcus's original trade. New regulations made certain types of manipulation more difficult, though not impossible. Retail investors were better educated about the risks, though many still fell victim to sophisticated schemes. Bitcoin itself had found its place as a legitimate asset class, traded by institutions and individuals alike. The wild swings of the early years had given way to more stable, though still volatile, price movements. Marcus no longer viewed Bitcoin as overvalued or undervalued. It had simply become another market to analyze and understand. Looking back on his journey from that fateful morning when he bet everything against Bitcoin, Marcus felt a sense of satisfaction that had nothing to do with money. He had proven that it was possible to succeed in financial markets without compromising ethical principles. More importantly, he had shown that success created opportunities to make a positive impact on the world. The boy who had grown up in modest circumstances in San Francisco had become one of the most successful traders of his generation. But more than that, he had become a force for market integrity and investor protection. His story wasn't just about making money. It was about using that money to create meaningful change. As Marcus sat in his office, now overlooking a view of Central Park rather than the trading floors of his past, he received a call from a young trader seeking advice. The caller had identified what appeared to be a manipulation scheme in a new cryptocurrency and wanted to know whether to short it. Marcus's advice was simple. Don't trade on what you know. Trade on what you can prove. And remember that every profit comes from someone else's loss. Make sure you're comfortable with that responsibility. The young trader thanked him and hung up. Marcus returned to his work, analyzing market data not for trading opportunities, but for patterns that might help the Foundation's next educational campaign. The man who had bet against Bitcoin and won had discovered something more valuable than money. He had found purpose. The financial world continued to evolve around him, with new assets, new technologies, and new opportunities for both legitimate investment and manipulation. Marcus remained vigilant, ready to act when necessary but always mindful of the broader impact of his decisions. His story had become legend in trading circles. The man who had risked everything on a single bet and won. But Marcus knew the real story was more complex. It wasn't about the bet itself, but about what he had done with the winnings. It wasn't about being right about Bitcoin, but about being right about the need for market integrity. As the sun set over Manhattan, casting long shadows across the city's financial district, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point. From a corner office trader to a hedge fund manager to an advocate for market reform, each step had built on the last. The Bitcoin trade had been the catalyst, but it was just the beginning. The real work of building fair and transparent markets would continue for the rest of his career. And Marcus was ready for that challenge, armed with the knowledge that even the most powerful market manipulators could be defeated by careful analysis, strategic thinking, and unwavering determination. The crypto world would remember Marcus Chen as the trader who bet against Bitcoin and won. But history would remember him as something more important. A man who used his success to fight for justice in the financial markets and protect the interests of ordinary investors against the schemes of the powerful. In the end, that legacy was worth far more than any amount of money he could have made from trading. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe to FictionWire Crypto. This is a fictional story created purely for entertainment.